Hi everyone, I'm Elena. I'm a Senior Director of Detection Research. I lead an extremely talented group of researchers worldwide focusing on delivering the best detection and protections for our product.
Hi, my name is Roma. I lead detection and response strategy in the company. I'm a group manager of product managers, highly technical ones. Worked in SentinelOne in the last 8 years, since its early days. Here to talk to you about our detection operations. Okay, our agenda for today will include an overview of our of our research department and how it operates, what's its main goals, and then an overview of our threat landscape and what we are trying to tackle with the research department, Elena's department, some of our new detection engines and existing detection engines to understand how this cycle is completed, and then we'll be open for some Q&A. This is the safe harbor slide. Please spend 20 seconds reading it. Yes. Okay. Gonna hand it off to Elena to talk about our research organization. Sorry.
No worries. All right, so let's talk about a little bit about detection research and what do we really do. So our mission is to lead the forefront of cybersecurity by integrating cutting-edge threat intel with robust detection and protection strategies. Cybersecurity is an industry that is always evolving. We have new vulnerabilities, we have threats, we emerge them every day. And staying one step ahead of threat actors requires us to be proactive rather than reactive. And this is really where our vision comes into play. Not only do we respond to today's challenges, but we need to anticipate the threats and challenges of tomorrow. You know, threat actors, they move fast, they adapt, they evolve their tactics with incredible pace. But here's the thing, to move quickly, they must reuse techniques. They cannot reinvent the wheel, they cannot start doing everything from scratch. And this really what creates very unique detection opportunities for us. And our strength lies in predicting those next steps. We're studying trends, we're understanding how threat actors think, and we anticipate the next wave of attacks. We build defenses that are already prepared for what's coming. This foresight, this ability to see where the techniques are headed, what they're going to be focusing on next, makes all the difference in ensuring our customers are protected. Our team is deeply focused, not just on identifying it, but innovating to stay ahead. We need to think what agents will be relevant tomorrow, next week, next year, not something that is relevant for the past. So we are the front runner because we always evolve, we always learn, we change and we improve our strategies going forward. We integrate threat intelligence to everything we do, and we're ensuring that attackers cannot outpace us. So let's talk a little bit about how we achieve our mission. So to do that, let's talk about the three pillars that we're looking at. The first is the continuous threat monitoring. So we have a very special threat intelligence team that is laser focused on detection. This is not regular threat intel, but this is a detection focused one. What we do is different from what regular threat intel teams do. Every day is about finding actively and analyzing threat actor activity to identify actionable trends that are related to detection specifically. We're constantly monitoring open source forums, Git repositories. We see what's going on across the board. And basically, we identify emerging techniques and trends that go later into the development. The second part is about agile detection and response. So we focus on refining our behavior-based detections, and we provide a very swift response to emerging threats. Now, unlike other solutions, we don't require dozens of updates every day. We're not built this way. Our detections are resilient. We mostly focus on generic detection that can cover a very wide range of threats. And when we notice gaps, especially with new and emerging threats, we are still able to act very quickly to close those gaps and make sure our customers are protected. And lastly, the third pillar is basically where innovation research comes into play. We take everything we've learned from threat monitoring and detection response efforts, and we combine that with deep operating system knowledge. With that, we focus on developing groundbreaking detection engines, solutions that address what we believe will soon become very prevalent in the threat landscape. Our goal is not just to respond, but really to anticipate and build those solutions. Let's talk a little bit about the flow of detection research and how we work. So we talked about a little bit about threat intelligence. So we collect and analyze information from a variety of sources, public repositories, private feeds, OSINT, and a key aspect is basically detonating emerging threat feed in our lab to observe how these threats react in real time. One recent example was the Linux CUPS vulnerability. So Threat Intel was always tracking the publication of the unauthorized remote code execution vulnerability. It affected all Linux systems, which is crazy. And once we obtained the proof of concept, the first thing we did was immediately analyze and test it against our systems. We confirmed that the malicious activity was actually detected, including the reverse shell. So that was great. And the thoroughness of those tests ensure that our customers are always protected. And if you go next to the circle, the next part is moved to our expert teams for deeper analysis. In this case, the team should further investigate what actually happened. They will find that beyond the initial detection, we were able to craft rules to identify potential exploitation attempts proactively. So not only do we see the post-exploitation, but we can also see the exploitation attempts themselves. So this basically allows us to anticipate future attempts, future exploitations, and kind of advance our technology further. And after implementing those detection techniques, we're basically able to focus on monitoring. So another key aspect of delivering detections is to make sure that we're balancing accuracy with disruption. We want to avoid unnecessary alerts while still identifying real threats. We're continuously monitoring, we're ensuring that our rules are refined and effective without generating false alarms that would affect normal operations. And finally, kind of the next step, and probably the most important one, is innovation research. We take everything we learn, we apply it to developing new engines, new techniques. And with the Linux CUPS vulnerability, for example, this knowledge helped us build an even more robust solution that basically able to anticipate and catch similar activities in the future. So I want to talk to you a little bit about real-world examples. There are many publications, they're always going on, and the question goes on how do we respond? How do we react to that? So let's talk about real-world examples. So a while back, a researcher tweeted that they had discovered a way to bypass EDR products, including some one. And naturally, this kind of information spreads very quickly in the community, and it's something that we take very, very seriously. So when this tweet surfaced, it immediately caught the attention of our threat intel team. They began analyzing the details shared by the researcher. We're trying to find whatever we can to understand what was accomplished, what did he do, how did he work. And interestingly, this wasn't the first time we had seen activity from this researcher. We had been tracking this individual since April because they posted a very similar post about CrowdStrike. So this prior activity from them kind of put them on our radar as it was. So we were already keeping a close watch on their findings. And upon examining the tweet and screenshots, our team noticed that the agent was offline. It seemed to be very badly configured, and it was a critical observation that indicated that the researcher might not have had the full context or accurate testing. So to address it, we actually reached out to him directly and offered a controlled environment for testing. We really, really want to collaborate with researchers worldwide. And to do that, we reached out to him and we wanted to see if he really found a bypass. And once the researcher tested within the environment, it turned out that the bypass did not actually evade our detections. So for me, this is a good example to highlight our commitment, not only to proactive monitoring, but also with engaging the security research community worldwide, collaborating directly with researchers. We want to make sure our detection capabilities are tested thoroughly. And this helps us maintain the level of protection we promise our customers. All right. Let's continue a little bit. Kind of forgot to show you this one, but this is basically where the researcher published the false positive part. All right, so let's talk a little bit about ransomware trends. So Akira and Play are some of the most prominent players. They're showing strong numbers consistently. I have to tell you that they're showing consistent strong numbers across Q2, Q3, and Q4, which is amazing. Akira Ransomware Group has been active since early 2023, and they have rapidly gained attention due to its sophisticated method and substantial financial impact. They're employing double extortion methods, which is very common nowadays for ransomware activities, to exploit data before encryption, and then basically they're using a ransomware as a service distribution model. Victims are often pressured to pay by threatening to release stolen data publicly. Akira has impacted over 250 organizations worldwide, generating around 42 million in ransom payments, which is crazy, by like 2024. The group has evolved its tactic. It's constantly evolving, and they're always tracking it. Um, they're doing a lot of changes, and they're doing Rust-based versions like Megazord to carry out their attacks. We have Play or Playcrew ransomware group discovered in June 2022. They've been targeting business and critical infrastructures in North America, South America, Europe. Sentinel-1 internal telemetry has seen a rise of this group since Q3 of 2023. Medusa is also another prominent player that I have to mention because they're really, really sophisticated methods, and they're combining a lot of impairment tools to their techniques, which is very interesting for us to track. So for the most part, the ransomware propagates by exploiting vulnerable services and hijacking legitimate accounts, sometimes utilizing initial access for exfiltration. So Medusa implements a lot of techniques. They're using living of the land, they're adding EDR impairments, really, really advanced, and this is definitely something on our threat intelligence radar. Let's talk about ransomware trends in general. So in 2024, ransomware attacks are becoming more sophisticated, more frequent, driven by a lot of key trends that I believe will continue to 2025. So let's talk about the first is ransomware as a service. The model has made ransomware attacks more accessible. They're providing ready-made tools and services for attackers with even limited technical skills. Ransomware as a service offers customizable ransomware, payment systems, and even customer support, making it easier for new cybercriminals to enter the scene. It is not easy to write a good locker, and this means that behind the scenes, there are very few threat actors that are actually capable of doing so. The next is complex extortion schemas. We were talking about double extortion. Attackers are adopting multi-layered extortion tactics, combining data encryption, data theft. I've actually seen recently, I've read a report where they're actually injecting data to make it even worse. So do we understand that they're creating pressure from all sides in order to gain more payment? And there has also been a significant rise in ransomware attacks targeting VMware ESXi hypervisors, especially over the past few years. So there are several factors that contribute to this trend. The first is there's a very high impact. So if you compromise an ESXi hypervisor, attackers can encrypt multiple VMs hosted on the server with just one action. And the ESXi environment often falls outside the visibility of traditional security tools. And that makes them very attractive targets for attackers. These hypervisors can go undetected for longer periods of time, allowing them to operate stealthily. And so we leverage the platform rule library to detect those attacks. Exploitation of vulnerabilities is basically, has always been a trend, but even more so now. We see EDR impairment tools that are basically, they come together along with a lot of exploits and zero-day vulnerabilities in order to bypass our EDR product. I believe this definitely a trend that will even grow in 2025. So definitely something that we will need to be looking out for. So let's talk about trends in Windows-specific attacks. So the first is bring your vulnerable driver. The technique involves exploiting legitimate but vulnerable drivers to escalate privileges and disable security mechanisms. Abusing signed drivers to gain control of the kernel is known and has been used for a while, but there has been a noticeable increase in such attacks over the past 2 quarters. The exploitation of public and zero-day vulnerabilities really has been around for decades, but the frequency and the speed of adoption have increased dramatically. Exploits are a lot more widely available in platforms like GitHub and underground forums, and this reduces the barrier for attackers to access powerful tools. And so the rise of exploit as a service model makes sophisticated exploits accessible to lower skilled attackers. I have to tell you that from personal experience in vulnerability research over the years, I've seen a significant evolution in exploitation techniques. In early days, a single well-placed vulnerability could achieve multiple outcomes. You didn't need to have an attack chain of 10. You could use one very good, strong vulnerability. And now you actually have to have a rather large attack chain to succeed. And as operating systems integrate more exploit mitigations over time, attackers began chaining more and more vulnerabilities just to achieve a single goal. So this shift paved the way for development of very complex attack chain and frameworks. And basically those frameworks can be used for detection purposes because they will be reusing those frameworks. The other and third part is the phallus malware. This is becoming a very significant trend in cybersecurity as it operates by exploiting legitimate processes and does not leave traditional files for detection. So instead of relying on executables, fileless attackers usually inject malicious code directly into memory or make them harder to trace. Sometimes they will be using living with the land techniques. There will basically be very difficult way to actually create signatures for those attacks. So they're able to bypass many security measures. Persist in the system sometimes undetected. However, it does not affect us because the way SentinelOne product works and the way that we monitor behaviorally, it does not affect our product at all. All right, let's continue a little bit about the Linux landscape and how it looks. So the first and foremost is crypto mining. So that continues to be a very significant concern in the Linux landscape. Crypto mining, malware takes control of system resources to mine cryptocurrency without the owner's knowledge. Monero is the most commonly mined coin, primarily because it can be efficiently mined using both CPU and GPU resources, and it's very attractive for them. One of the most prominent tools used one way or another is XMRig. By the way, there was recently a vulnerability. It was the Perfcatel stealthy malware designed to mine Monero, published a few weeks ago, a few months ago. And the malware is very evasive, tries to hide itself very well, but it does use Bonkit, uses CVE 2021 to elevate privileges, which we actually detect. So we are able to detect. This is definitely something that we continue looking at. The other trend is basically the increasing use of backdoors in eBPF kits. It is much more difficult to detect a backdoor than the initial attack or exploitation. In many cases, they remain hidden until they actually perform a malicious action. These are sophisticated techniques used by attackers to maintain persistence on compromised systems while evading detections. The eBPF is a Linux kernel technology enabling engineers to build programs that run in kernel space, allowing attackers to intercept and manipulate system calls, network traffic, system behavior, and basically this enables them to hide from activity. By the way, Perfc, the one we were talking about, they do contain a backdoor, but it does not, it uses user mode injection. It does not use this method. So let's talk about the third, is a rise of malicious web shells. So these scripts provide attackers with a remote interface to control compromised servers. So most malicious web shells are actually forks of existing projects, which are then modified to suit the attacker's needs. So the reason they're so popular is because they really provide easy-to-use access, enabling them to upload files, execute commands, and escalate privileges. They blend into legitimate traffic, so they make it a lot more challenging to detect. All right, let's talk a little bit about a cloud. So one of the most prevalent cloud security risks come from IAM, from identity and access management misconfigurations. These misconfigurations allow attackers to escalate privileges and gain access to sensitive resources. If an IAM role is over-permissioned, an attacker who compromises a low-privileged account can elevate the privileges to access critical resources. And this is really often due to overly permissive policies, such as granting user broad access without considering the principle of least privilege. It's crucial to limit access rights based on necessity versus convenience. Many cloud breaches start with improper IAM permission that allow attackers to escalate the access within the cloud environments. In general, misconfigurations are the most common attack vector in cloud environments. These occur when services are incorrectly set up or left unsecured, providing attackers with easy entry points. Examples including publicly exposed S3 buckets, improperly configured security groups, or leaving management interfaces open to the internet. Attackers can exploit those weaknesses to steal sensitive data, gain control of cloud resources, and this really highlights the need for continuous monitoring and auditing of cloud configurations to ensure compliance with security best practices. So misconfigurations often arise because of the complexity of basically cloud services and the rapid pace sometimes of deployment without proper security reviews. And once attackers gain access to cloud environments, they often engage in lateral movement to expand their span of control. So this is commonly done by exploiting compromised credentials, abusing service-to-service mechanisms. Attackers may move laterally by leveraging access token, SSH keys, API keys that provide access to other services. The cloud management plane is also a very interesting place because it's the central control hub for a cloud environment responsible for managing all business services. And attacks on management plane can be extremely catastrophic because they give attackers a complete control over the cloud infrastructure. Common attacks include gaining unauthorized access to cloud control interfaces, manipulating API requests, or abusing admin privileges in platforms like AWS Management Console, Azure Portal, or Google Cloud Console. Attackers gain access to management plane, they can disrupt services, delete or steal data, or change configuration that affect the entire cloud infrastructure. Let's talk about macOS. Last but not least, trends. So in recent years, there's been a significant rise of proliferation of info stealers, specifically targeting macOS. A large number of those stealers are based on open source projects, Atomic Stealer, for example. So many of these variants are basically a fork of those, but they're being modified and rebranded under various names. And these malicious tools are being sold on underground forums, Telegram channels, and dark web marketplace as malware as a service. And this makes it a lot easier for low-skilled threat actors to deploy these tools against unsuspecting macOS users. Another growing trend is basically spear phishing attacks. One example is used by, particularly by North Korea. We often learn victims with malicious PDFs related to cryptocurrency assets. So like Rust Bucket, Candy Corn, which are designed to steal cryptocurrency-related data to gain more access to infected systems. So these campaigns demonstrate basically the persistent targeting of macOS users by advanced threat actors who are focusing heavily on financial gain, especially the cryptocurrency sector. And despite the rise of sophisticated threats, adware remains one of the most widely distributed munitions in macOS. Adware campaigns continue to plague macOS users, with families like Pirate and AdLoader being some of the most widely distributed. Pirate and AdLoader are known for invasive pop-up ads, browser hijacking, installing unwanted software. Not only does it slow down the device, but it does create additional potential security risks by opening doors to more serious infections. And so the adware sometimes is perceived as less dangerous. It still represents a significant challenge for all of us. All right, Roma.
Second, okay. So now we've talked about all of the threats and how do we monitor them. Now let's talk a little bit about our detection technology and how it works. To start, the detection technology changes. We constantly every quarter release new rules into all of the detection engines. So I'm going to start with our platform concept. When we started Sentinel-1, we aimed at creating generic detections. Why did we start that? Most of the initial team of the company were malware architects of sorts, and we knew that malware code is being reused very commonly. For example, a TTP used for persistence by Zeus, very common malware for financial fraud, will eventually leak out like it did. Its source codes were published and it was reused by others. So if you detect generically Zeus malware persistence, you're going to detect anybody who copies that code. So our platform advantages. It is AI powered. From the very start, before AI was a gimmick, we developed rules that generically detect TTPs, and we well, we tell them in mightier terms like persistence and like detecting when somebody is encrypting files. Well, it's a ransomware behavior. We provide customer with context using our storyline technology. What does it mean, context? It is easy with SentinelOne to understand the root cause analysis of the threat in your operation system. For example, when you see a detection that says ransomware, okay, great. Customer wants to understand where did that attack start. For example, the storyline will show who initiated the ransomware process in the first place. Let's take a document that was downloaded by email. So you will see a storyline that points out that Outlook started that attack. Of course, the storyline technology also allows us to do a remediation process, increasing the time to value. What it means is that when we look at a storyline, we understand what processes are part of the operation system, what processes are new, what executables are new, and what events are part of each of those processes, and we mitigate and remediate them accordingly. I'm going to start with a review of all of our detection capabilities, and then I have a slide about each one of them to dive in deep. Okay, first of all, our detection services. Our static AI engine and reputation engine both target detecting malicious files or buffers, but they're mostly files. Our static AI engine is an XGBoost ML machine learning model that learns what features, and I'll show what's a feature later, is malicious, and then extracts the same features from any file written to the disk and determines if it's malicious or not. Our reputation engine leverages our partnerships with threat intelligence providers to tell if a file is malicious. Our behavioral AI consists of thousands of behavioral rules that tell if a current state of a storyline is malicious, meaning that if a very large number of events combined together are malicious or not. Our platform rules or telemetry-based rules take telemetry that our agents send to the cloud, and our security researchers and our customers write their own rules to detect threats based on telemetry. For example, if you know that a certain regex in a command line matches a known threat, you can write a star rule for it. It will detect it. And our identity capabilities protect credential threat, lateral movement threat, and IDPs. First, let's talk about our infrastructure for detection that is called Storyline. Storyline, as you can see on the right side of the screen, is tree representation of the processes involved in an attack. How does it help us? A security researcher wants to ask intelligent questions without hurting the performance of the machine it questions, and determining if a state of a group of processes or a single process is malicious or not. What Storyline does for us, it acts as a container of all of the processes involved in an attack and all of the events associated with them. Let's take an example. If I take a CMD, a command line interpreter, start it, then I create a registry key, create another process from it, create a file, that will all be registered in the storyline of that command line interpreter. Security researchers will be able to determine if that group of processes, that storyline, is malicious or not by applying many rules or many statistical analysis and AI. Let's take ransomware, for example. Let's write an executable that touches many files and changes them. Sounds like a ransomware. There are many other modifiers that we use to avoid false positives, but this is the concept that we have. Also, Storyline, as I said, will allow us to then iterate all of the processes involved and mitigate and kill only the ones that are relevant. For example, especially in cloud environments, many of the attacks are living off the land. And if we delete your sudo, your chmod, your copy, basically all of the executables associated with your operation system, it's likely the operation system will be broken past our mitigation, which is kind of doing the attacker's jobs for them and DDoSing it. So we only delete what's necessary. Next one is our static AI. So our static AI has an ML model for each file type that we protect with static AI. For example, portable executables, Mahos, ELFs, and so on. And it extracts. So how do we train it? Into like 2 sentences. We take a very large number of malicious files. We know that a certain group that we took, let's say 30 million samples, are malicious, and another 30 million are benign. We extract features like the density, the pointer location, the execution pointer location, the references, the TLS section, the entropy, its properties, like if it's packed or not. And we label them, meaning which one of those features is associated with malicious activity or not. Then we do the same with benign files. So we take their features and label them as benign because we know they're benign. Then we place them on a graph, and whatever is above the line is malicious, whatever is below is benign, and whatever is on the line is gray. It means we would know. Next one is our reputation engines, which leverages our threat intelligence partnerships. That one is pretty easy. It just tells if a file is malicious or not based on prior knowledge. Something we plan to add is we want to add more reputation attribution in 2025. We want to do IOC classification, so telling if a certain DNS connection belongs to a certain group, and also correspond specific properties of the file to MITRE TTP capabilities and those IOCs. And with that, adjust the severity of the alerts. For example, if you have a Russian APT in your network that just leveraged an ongoing campaign IOC, probably set that alert to high. So at least you'll look at it and take action. Suspicious driver blocking. This is another capability that comes as a response of what Elena was talking about, to bring your vulnerable driver. We've seen a steep increase in that the last couple of quarters, and honestly, also as a former defensive security researcher, it's much easier to bring a vulnerable driver somebody else wrote than finding a 0-day. So our driver blocking capability supports that. Our security researchers are constantly looking for new vulnerable drivers out there and are blocking them. And we're really going to expand. We're going to continue expanding that capability to block these drivers on system start and to do attributions of those drivers. Next thing is anti-tampering. Anti-tampering became a problem when SentinelOne became a bigger company. We started to notice that our agents are being removed or actively targeted as a first step of any attack. The attackers would tamper with our EDR collection capabilities, or would simply try to remove the agent, prevent it from communicating, and so on. We've developed many capabilities to stop attackers from tampering with our agents. That includes agent file protection, agent process protection, agent service protection, and simply protecting the agent from being killed by a kill command on Linux or a process termination command on Windows. We always encourage people to submit bug bounties if they find a way to bypass our agent, and are always happy to fix it. Although we sincerely hope there won't be found none. Behavioral AI agent. Behavioral AI agent is our most sophisticated detection engine. It incorporates a little more, I think 1,700 detection rules that either act single-handedly or combined with each other, and it acts as our way of detecting the most sophisticated attacks and the most sophisticated APTs in the world. Our behavioral engine allows our security researchers to write detections for the indicators you see on your screen, like executing a Metasploit stager, which is pretty straightforward, or detecting a code injection and combining it with a UAC bypass, or detecting access to credentials and then a lateral movement. An additional thing that we recently, I wouldn't say changed, but enhanced, is that for certain behavioral detections, for certain business risks like ransomware, credential theft, privilege condition, and a couple of more, we invest an extra. So we hire security researchers to specifically target those disciplines, creating a more sophisticated detections, and we call it a sub-detection, sub-engine of our behavioral engine. For example, our ransomware engine. It has the ability to detect ransomware without relying on decoys or traps. Many of the most modern detection engines on ransomware, they just lay traps. They would put a file in a known location that the malware encrypts. They would hide it. So any security company does that today. And then the file, when it's accessed, basically it's a ransomware detection because the file will be changed. We've discovered that attackers figured it out and they became more careful. And also this means you will detect the attack only when the encryption starts, which is a bit more right in the MITRE metrics. We're actively developed an engine and detection methodology around it to detect it a little earlier. Also, we discovered that traditional TTPs that ransomware will do, like being persistent, are not happening anymore. Ransomwares do not care anymore. They persist after reboot. They just try to encrypt anything they can, and if they don't, they self-delete. So we also trying to detect as soon as possible the ransomware, not when it encrypts, a stage before. The next sub-engine that we have is our lateral movement engine that allows to detect lateral movement TTPs and lateral movement attacks. The difference for us is a lateral movement attack is when I connect to another computer, then let's say I use curl to download a malicious file and I execute it. So yes, you have detected a malicious file that was dropped on your computer, but the attack started on another PC that was hacked. So we're going to show you in a storyline that the first node is an IP and a username that was used, indicating the attack was lateral. The second thing that the lateral movement engine allows us is to detect brute force or session, for example, brute force. So if somebody tries to log in 20,000 times in 1 minute to a host using SSH, it is likely an attack. Drift detection for containers is coming in the first half of 2025, and it will enable us to detect anomalous behaviors in immutable containers, replacing our application control engine. Immutable containers are containers that are not supposed to change, as simple as that. Well, while that in theory is true, in practice, when a container starts, it does change, and it creates new files. It uses files also for a communication method for the operation system. So we developed an engine that doesn't learn the container behavior. It actively monitors the event on it and decides if the combination of those events is malicious or not. For example, we can explore the attack that's presented here. An attacker compromises a public-facing web app on a host. Attacker drops a file and persists. The Drift engine recognizes the anomalous file drop and the process creation and the connection created to them, combining them to drift detection, meaning the original purpose of that immutable container is now changing and it's suspicious. We are really looking forward to that new drift detection engine release and seeing its efficacy in the field. Enumeration engine. Enumeration engine is our attempt to shift left in our detection on Windows hosts. It's going to be also released in the first half of 2025. With that engine, we're going to try to tackle the first things an attacker do. Whenever I join, whenever I wake up as a malware, first things I need to do is to understand where have I woken up. So malwares, they have to enumerate the processes, the files, everything, network information. And then they go on and try to do what they came for, whether it's encrypt or steal the data. But the first thing is usually they need to understand where they have woken up. So our enumeration engine will try to detect that stage, trying to differentiate a legitimate enumeration, like a list directory command, which is, to say the least, very common and non-malicious, from the same command being used in a malicious context. Next is our detection library that will, for customers that purchase an EDR and can send telemetry, third-party logs to our detection library, will allow them to ingest events and based on those events beat detections, and also will provide an out-of-the-box detection library that hopefully will inspire them to either create their own rules or copy the detection rules that we'll provide to them. Also, next year, we're going to provide detection rules that are scheduled, detection rules that are based on graph correlation, and anomalies detection rules. That is it. Thank you very much for listening. And now we have some time for questions, if there is any. Okay.
Maybe I'll ask one that I've heard a lot going. Roma, what is the detection engine that you're most excited about that's going to come out?
I would say the enumeration engine is a big hit, and the detection library for me are the two biggest ones because they're gonna make our customer life easier. 1 second.
All right, there was a question that I see here about Medusa and how it's leveraging bring a vulnerable driver to impair EDR products. And it's specific to SentinelOne. So I'll answer that. So Medusa, essentially, I'll start by saying that Medusa is ransomware as a service. So there are many affiliates using Medusa. So in some cases, they are adding environmentals to it. Sometimes they're not. The other part is they're basically bringing vulnerable drivers, and what they do with them, they're basically escalating privileges running kernel code. And in this way, they can basically try to impair and tamper with EDR products. We see them targeting all of the largest ones, not just SentinelOne. But there are also some generic methods that maintain tamper with almost any EDR products. I have to say that we not only do we block those vulnerable drivers, but we also have generic protections against those tampering attempts. So this is a trend that we're seeing. We're always checking to see and making sure we're protected, but it's also something that's been on our radar for a while now. And so we're familiar with it. We're blocking it. We do have protections in place already. All right. I see a lot more questions now coming in. Not sure why I didn't see them before. Let's see, Roma, do you see them as well?
I don't, but I'll try to reload.
All right, I see. I'm seeing sorry. Okay, sorry. I'm trying to scroll through it. So I'll start by there was a question on why anti-tampering is a challenge. So you're right. It's the tampering that's the challenge, but anti-tampering essentially is our way to deal with it. So for me, it's a challenge on how do we create a very strong, resilient agent that is basically protected against those tampering attempts. So essentially, it's a bit of a cat and mouse game that we're always trying to protect and make sure we are ahead of attackers, but they will also try to always tamper with the agent the same. So that's why it's research, and I love it. So it's interesting, but it's always evolving. So it's a challenge for me in how to create a very resilient agent. It's a challenge for them in how to bypass it. All right. What role do you see quantum chips will play in the near future? I believe I believe encryptions will be the biggest problem once we will have those, but we'll see moving forward. Um, Currently, this is definitely not something that's there yet. You're right that we want to be prepared for the future, but I do believe that we still have a lot of time before it's actually there and hitting us and hitting regular customers. Um, you're asking, there was a question about basically each new
I
agent
can
version that comes out will address the false positive. So I'll answer that. Actually, there are two ways to address false positives. You're right that every agent release will try to do better, but we also have the ability to update some of the detection content, and we can improve false positives by updating those as well. So we can improve FP rates not just by agent releases. So that's also important to note. Yes, agent releases will usually improve, but not only that. We can do that via updates sometimes as well. It depends on the logic, depends on the engine. But yes, this is a continuous process that we go through. We monitor, we make sure it's good, and sometimes we improve if needed. Roman, do you want to take some?
uh, yes, of course. I can also add to that that with our live security updates capability, we can update behavioral detections and other models remotely, including false positive updates. But yeah, definitely possible with the agent releases too. Okay, I've seen a Google extension causing issues and being a malware. How does SentinelOne handle the browser extensions? So a browser extension behavior, if it's malicious, will do anything we can to detect it. Because a browser extension, for example, if it does like a DOM injection or something like that, we'll try to detect that. Also, if that extension drops malicious files, we'll also monitor those file writes and try to detect them. I hope that answers that question. Second, I'm reading through the questions.
I'll read one. In terms of vulnerable drivers, are there any improvements for reducing FPs, such as expired signing due to old OS files? So it's not much. The problem with vulnerable drivers is that in many cases they can also be used legitimately. So as an action item, we usually prefer to have our customers protected against those. The legitimate use is so rare that in many cases it is much better to avoid it. As for generic mechanisms to check the validity of the file, we do have those in place, but they're mostly generic and not specific per file. We do have some mechanisms to try and understand whether or not the file can be and should be legitimately run, but it's definitely something difficult to. It's a fine line between keeping your customers vulnerable and kind of not enabling them to work operationally with those drivers.
Okay, I can answer. Are there any upcoming updates that will involve telemetry for missed events mentioned in the EDR telemetry project, which now became very popular all around the world? Yes, 100%. Each quarter we're changing our telemetry, we're adding it, we are changing how we collect it. Okay. Okay, do you know when the threat detection library will be generally available to our customers, or any developments you can share on that? The detection library should be available in the first half of this year. This is the current plan. However, as you all know, that might change, but I'm optimistic. If a customer has a recommendation for enhancement or changes to a threat detection library rule tuning, how should they submit those requests? There is no need to submit the request. When you will deploy the rule from the detection library, you will have an option to change it. So you can deploy the rule as it is, like with the exact rule that our researchers came up with, and you can change it for your own if you want to. If you feel that we're creating something, just a pure false positives, a support ticket, or we're going to add in general to the console a way to kind of, do an unlike button. That's going to come later this year, but the detection library in the GA release that's coming in the first half of this year, already seen the demo of it, you will be able to change it. Do you know if the scheduled rules come from the same bucket as the star rules from the licensing perspective? Yes, so far that's the decision. Do you know how many customers are end up paying ransomware attackers? I'll be very honest, I don't know even one. Not even one. Okay. How is SentinelOne helping with the add-in on Chrome that causes malware wherever user logs into Chrome? Second, how is SentinelOne helping with the add-in on Chrome that causes malwares? Okay, so I assume the question is about an add-on to Chrome that probably tracks your credentials and then it steals them and sends them away. So I can only assume that's done with a DOM injection. And today, good websites, first of all, they protect by themselves from it. And we would also try to recognize that injection. Purely on its own, it is pretty tough without a false positive to detect it, because DOM manipulation is something that's commonly done also by a legitimate website. So every website is basically doing it. However, we do have our thoughts around how to enhance those detections. Okay. Okay. I think I'm running out of questions. 1 second, I'll reload the page, see if there's one.
What do you see as the biggest challenge in cybersecurity today? Well, I think the biggest challenge in my eyes is exactly the balance between operational and making sure people are able to work freely but stay protected. I think all the leaving of the land techniques, vulnerable drivers, they're all kind of pushing us towards more refined detections and that are able to see the full context of everything going on. The storyline helps a lot. The platform rule library will give us that context. But I really think this is the biggest challenge. The problem is that many threat actor activity may basically look and masquerade as regular activity. And while you want to keep users protected, they still need to work. And they have applications that sometimes act more malicious than malicious malware. So keeping that balance is extremely difficult. And I think that from detection point of view, we need the fuller context. And I think this is where the storyline part comes in. This is where the platform rule library will come in. Having the ability to correlate between events, understand the full story, and not just a single action, in my opinion, is the strongest part in what we're doing.
There is a question about what is the most popular ransomware target containers in Kubernetes in the wild, and what are their main focus vulnerabilities? So I'll say a disclaimer here. SentinelOne can only see its own telemetry. So in the wild for us is no, it's just what we see in customer letters. I know that I've seen Siloscape sometimes, but also very rare, and it does like some persistence mechanism and it goes through credentials. But in other that, I don't see a lot of ransomware attacks on Kubernetes. The reason for that is that ransomware usually encrypts something that is long-lived, and Kubernetes and its infrastructure is designed by default to be short-lived. So I see less attacks there in the wild. However, I'm sure there are. What are their
We
main
see a
focus
lot more crypto
vulnerabilities?
mining. Yeah, we
Sorry.
see a lot more crypto mining
Okay.
on in those areas because crypto mining is a lot more common on Kubernetes and containers. And so this is the area that we're seeing most is actually crypto mining there versus ransomware. Um, as for main vulnerabilities, I don't have the statistics nearby, but in many cases, a lot of use of one days that were recently published that are being reused again and again. The perf for example, was a good example of it. The pawn, um, the pawn kit there that was used, we see that a lot as well. We have protection against it. So a lot of parts are basically reused of one days.
I'll also say that I feel, and well, I've been out of the pure security research game for a year now. I feel that as security researcher, I would have gone with finding a misconfiguration rather than finding a vulnerability to infiltrate cloud infrastructure. Seems to be like a bit of a cheaper solution. Okay. Will Sentinel be considering moving to the zero trust arena? We don't have plans for that, but we'll know that plans change. I wish we moved to every part of the cybersecurity that there is, but we want to be more focused. Okay. Okay. There is a question, can you change the logs folder storage path? I'm sorry, I don't remember all of the commands of the CLI of the agent by heart, but I'm pretty sure you can. I just don't remember how to do it out of the box. I mean, I was just looking at our documentation, but you can change the installation location and all the other settings. Okay. Okay. We are at time. So first of all, thank you all for joining and hearing about our security research operations, our detection and our detection capabilities. I really enjoyed it. I always love talking about the detection capabilities. Always love for those sessions. Love that they're interactive. That is it.
Thank you all for your time. It was a pleasure.